Buenos días a todos. Good morning, everybody. I hope that you have a good rest. Yesterday was a busy day. Today is going to be also a busy day. But I guess that we are having a good gathering. Actually, it's a pleasure to share with all of you different point of view experiences. For the second day, because as you can notice in the program, the first day it was called the immersion, and the second day it's also the common reflection day. We wanted to start with a very good friend of Loyola Andalucía, with Father Daniel Villanueva, in a very important field where we really believe, which is his Jesuit.Networking. You know, our group of international relations, we do a lot in terms of opening opportunities between our universities. Most of the people that we are meeting in here, we see this not as a profession, but actually as a vocation. And I guess that we will find a lot of consolation in the Dani Villanueva approach for Jesuit.Networking, where we can find a more universal sense of mission. Despite our work in universities, we need to know, understand, and see how we can partner with the rest of our networks within the Society of Jesus. Dani is coordinating a very important project, Jesuit.Networking, where he's also identifying and classifying, and this is something common that happens with the network of Jesuit universities, that we are still understanding how the network works and how many of us, because the last number would be something like 80?
83.
83. I remember when we started to talk about it, there were like 30 or 40. So you can imagine 83 networks within the Society of Jesus. So I hope that you enjoy very much in this important reflection, because you will find probably a lot of answer in the work that we do, and actually will give you more empowering on how to collaborate in a bigger picture, not just solely in the work that we do within universities. In terms of an introduction of Dani, well, when you have to introduce a friend, you know, it's kind of easy, but also kind of difficult in terms to describe all the capabilities and all the qualities that Dani has. But he holds a degree in computer engineering and a theology, which is kind of interesting. He has a postgraduate in Fordham University, humanitarian aid, in ESADE about NGO management, leadership and social innovation as well in ESADE, and the Global Executive MBA by Georgetown in the United States, where he was, and we're very proud of that, one of the few Spaniards vice chairman of the board of trustees, and you are now in the board of trustees in ESADE. But he is a very social person, and his work has been always towards the marginalized, working with NGOs as a vice president in Entre Culturas, Fe y Alegría, and Alboam, promoting educational networks all around the world. So he has been assisting to two general congregations, especially in communication. Actually, in the last congregations, we really had the opportunity to enjoy from outside Rome and to follow up what's happening. That was also Dani played an important role in that. It's also a member of the vice president of the ICAI at Comillas University Foundation and the vice president for Savior Network. So Father Daniel Villanueva, he will introduce Jesuit.Networking. Thank you, Dani, for being with us and for supporting the work that we do, and to understand and know better how to support also this international relations group. Thank you. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Borja. Thank you. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you here. Each time the people from Loyola Andalucía call, I always answer because I really believe on the project you are launching from this campus, and I think especially regarding internationalization, you have an amazing vision. For the last 10 years, I have been always crossing Borja everywhere, and there is also something very interesting in the way you are projecting the university into the future that I think is very worthy to support and to accompany. So that's why I'm always very, very close to your endeavors. I don't have any watch, so maybe I think we only have 45 minutes, and it's going to be tough to cover this in that time, but I'm going to try. Because what I bring here is just a wider framework about collaboration that hopefully will help us to encourage a little bit your work that I think is quite interesting. And is when he told me you were gathering here in Seville, I thought it was a very worthy group to talk with. Actually, I think I have already conversation with many of you in different arenas, especially the internationalization group of Aushal. We have been already having a similar conversation than the one we are going to have today. Hopefully the repetition is helpful also to get in depth. I prepared just 6 quick points in order to, hopefully we can have a conversation at the end. I'm not sure with 45 minutes that we are going to have a lot of time, but I will be around anyway to answer and to interact with you. I want to start talking about Ukraine. This picture is one of the families saying goodbye when they were taking the train out of Kiev. And I think I bring this picture because for me the response of the Society of Jesus to the Ukraine war has been a very good example of the potential of networking within the Society of Jesus. So 24th February was when the war started, and one day after the war started, we were already sending emails and getting in touch with the Society of Jesus in Ukraine and all the surrounding countries, Poland, Romania, Slovakia, and Hungary. One day after that, Rome has already named one person responsible in each of the countries to connect or to coordinate the response to the emergency. 3 days later, we have already meeting of Jesuit.Network, the network of NGOs and development offices, and also with the Jesuit Refugee Service. We have a meeting together with the responsibles of each of the country in order to know how to coordinate better. In 1 week, we have already a global appeal for solidarity with Ukraine. I think this is something that has never happened before, such a quick response at the global level. You can imagine the amount of coordination behind in order to have all these appeals for donations in many countries in the world coordinated already on the global website of the Jesuits. This has never happened before so quick, but I think it's a very interesting example of how when we collaborate together, and especially when we do it consistently over the time, we learn and we somehow solidified procedures and ways of proceeding that when the moment arrives, we can activate quite easily. So why this happens so quick? For me, one of the strengths of our response to emergencies right now is that we have been doing it for many years. At the beginning, not so good, but little by little, you have here all the different emergencies due to wars or earthquakes or natural disasters or other different situations that where Jesuit.Network together with Fe Alegría and together with the Jesuit Refugee Service have been answering emergency response over the time. That's why we have learned and we have a strong protocol that we can activate it. We have a team that knows how to work when the moment arrives, who to call, you know, what is our mandate, what are the other players, which mandates they have. So the more we collaborate, the more we try, the more we learn. There are many errors, there are many situations with a lot of tension among us, especially when it refers to pressure and emergency and power and political mandate, but it's the only way to learn because we have never done this before. And now we know how to do it due to the experience. This is another good example to open up. I'm giving you examples from my field because it's what I know. I do international development. So the other good example is the earthquake in Nepal in 2015. So 25th April 2015, we have a strong earthquake in Nepal that destroyed many of the facilities in the cities and the rural areas. And one of the best examples I have of the power of networking is that 6 years later, 23rd November last year, we were opening the network of Fe Alegría, inaugurating it in Nepal. And I think in the middle of these 6 years, what we have was a strong operation on our international networks, first in emergency response, but then in international development, and then in institutional strengthening on the local works, and then another network that arrived to somehow give umbrella and cover the work of those rural schools that we were building out of the emergency response. I'm not sure if you are following me, but the importance of how we operate from one of the networks doing emergency response to another network taking the lead on education development is amazing. And we can do that when we coordinate, when we have the spaces to talk, when we understand the other strategies, and especially when all of us have a good, open and wide vision in order to know what is the objective of our mission and our work. So I get excited with this because I think it's not easy to see when you have in the news that the Fe Alegría in Nepal started, so it's okay, beautiful, but it's very important to understand, okay, it has been 6 years of a huge and beautiful process that is all about Jesuit networks operating together. I wanted to start with this because I think this feeling of strength is what I believe we can build up together, especially with groups like yours. We have in our DNA something about working together. It's part of the vision of the society. I think that I always put the example of Arupe when he was visiting South Asia as general in '79, and he saw the boat people floating in international waters. It was probably the first huge humanitarian emergency that was worldwide known. Arupe came back to Rome very worried and thinking that this is a type of emergency that cannot be responded from only one place, from only one province. So he wrote to all the provincials in the world a telegram. This is the telegram that I found in researching in Rome. He wrote a telegram asking for help, saying we should respond. But we don't know how. Probably the people in the Curia were really thinking, Father Arupe, you are crazy, what are you doing? But the point is that the answer of the provincials to this telegram was so overwhelming that it was the beginning of the Jesuit Refugee Service as an institution trying to respond from the universal perspective problem that was not possible to respond through the regular provinces. So this is another good example of vision, universal vision that somehow open up ways of implementing solutions, apostolic works that were not possible before only from one angle. Okay, I think we have this in our DNA as Society of Jesus. Also the Ratio Studiorum at the end, if you think on it, is a dream, an idea that we can have a common approach to education worldwide. Imagine, it's really powerful just to think this way, that we can actually abstract from our experience a common methodology to approach education everywhere. So this is what we have always in our way of thinking. The Society of Jesus, the Jesuits and all of you that work with us, we always think big because it's part of our way of thinking. You have seen many universities, houses of the society, and many places. There are always maps of the Society of Jesus everywhere because we have this kind of tension to understand the wholeness, and this is the first one I found from 1646 when you see Ignatius like the tree, the poor guy is just on the like the center, and then you have all the Society of Jesus coming out of him, like communities, provinces, countries, This is amazing. So there is a tendency to understand us as a unique apostolic body. So we are not just a group of people answering a mission. No, we are somehow one We are somehow one. That's why in 2016, networking, to work together, collaboration and discernment become like three main aspects of our way of proceeding. So this is our biggest, the General Congregation, our biggest leading body. It's amazing that networking came up to this level of acknowledgement. So how we arrived there is what we are trying to explain, you know. So first of all, let me just very quickly say, as I said, in our DNA, as Society of Jesus, we have the idea of universality. And I'm not going to get in detail, but the contemplation of the incarnation is the space where all of us think about the mission. If you have done the spiritual exercises, you understand what I mean. As Ignatius said to the one who is doing the exercises, contemplate the world in its totality, like, you know, with people dying, people being born, people black, people white, some people laughing, some people crying. The whole idea of diversity and wholeness is already on Ignatius' vision. And he said that is the world where Jesus is sent by the Father with the help of the Spirit, you know, to do a work of reconciliation. That is why the society, we always understand the Jesuit as the one who is sent to the world. I think we listen in the homily today, many of these ideas in Jaime's preaching, you know. So, you know, the Society of Jesus, wherever we need to go to the greatest glory of God, this idea of mobility. So we are just a body that is answering the needs. Where we need to go, we go. Actually, the fourth vow of obedience to the Pope is actually a very intelligent idea of having a link to the bishop of the universal church. Not just in order to avoid to be trapped in just a local environment, we have another special vow that regarding the mission, we can be sent wherever the church asks us to go. And this is an idea of we need to be open, radical, available to go when the church is asking us to go. And this is part of our understanding of the mission, you know. So there are two, I call them the spiritual principles of networking, that I think are in the background of all our efforts. One is this idea of we have a universal mission. We are the Catholic Church, universal. So the perspective is always the wholeness. Understood from our place, understood through the local work, obviously, so there is no conflict here, but starting from the big picture. Otherwise, we lost perspective. No? And the second is that God is already in creation. We don't bring God to creation. He's already there. He's actually working. No? He's actually working on creation in humanity, and we are invited to collaborate. We have a vocation to collaborate with God in the transformation of the world. And I think in the background of all our concepts of networks are these two basic principles of spiritual principles. No? Our mission is universal, and we are invited to transform with God. I think this is basic. If we don't understand this, or the people we work with do not share this idea, then we have a problem. As Gonzalo was asking, if someone is questioning the universal perspective, then we have a problem. If someone thinks we shouldn't transform reality, then we have a problem. If someone thinks that we should bring God to where God is not, then we have a problem. So these are basic ideas that untie the potential of the network. Without them, it's very difficult to collaborate because another agendas came into place. This has been something that worries all the generals since the beginning, but the first I found was Jansen's. He was already saying, oh my God, the things we could be doing only if we were to join forces and work in a spirit of unity. It looks like we have never found a way yet, because all the leaders have been asking us to do it without a lot of success, I say, but maybe in the last few years we are actually moving forward. Kolbenbach was actually very clear about the lack of success on using the possibilities of our international body. Sorry, I forgot to translate this slide, but this is very quick. In the general congregations in the last, since 1966, we have been somehow trying to understand our mission together, you know. So when when now you see in 2019 the Universal Apostolic Preference coming up from Rome, it's actually the third time that we are trying to specify what are the priorities when we work together at the global level. This is huge. It has never happened before, because before we always use the formula of the Institute to understand our mission, you know, from the 16th century. But then in the 60s, they create a commission to study what is actually our mission together. How can we update what we do together? And they came with 4 priorities: theological reflection, social apostolate, education, and mass media. And then in 2003, they renewed it into 5 apostolic preferences: Africa, China, intellectual apostolate, interprovincial houses, and migrants and refugees. And then in 2019, came up with these 4 UAPs that you probably know already. So there is a kind of a trend of conceptualization of, okay, what we can do together. It's interesting. And also there is another trend of attempts to create structures to take care of those priorities, you know. And then came the Conference of Superiors, the secretariats in Rome, and some attempts of changing the secretaries little by little. My whole point here is that these are 3 attempts to specify our mission. These are a lot of attempts to create structures, but what is happening is actually that we are conceptualizing the mission a lot, but we don't find a way to actually structure those dimensions in a proper way. And I think, this is my interpretation, that networks are being the answer to fill that gap. So we are creating networks because we need the structures to deploy the mission that we say is universal, and we don't know exactly how to do it. So networking is emerging out of the apostolic works. It's not actually something that is coming up from the top. It's coming up from bottom up, because you are creating networks in the way you are answering the apostolic challenges. And the society is finally understanding that those are the structures that we need. This is not new. In 1995, we already have, in GC 34, there is all the, I love this one, because they say networking is necessary to deploy the mission, but we don't know how. And it is in a general congregation. They say we need to go trial and error, through trial and error. And we don't have the time, but you can have a lot of calls to network in the last few general congregations. So it is everywhere now. We know we need to network. We know we don't know exactly how to do it. Adolfo Nicolas was one of the prophets of the universality, saying, you know, something like this: interconnectedness is the new context to understand the world and also to discern our mission. And Arturo is saying all the time, we have a strong potential in the networks. They allow us to glimpse and develop the immense international potential that we have as an international society. So networking is a response. Hopefully I'm bringing you to this reflection little by little. You know, it's a response, and it's happening. This is the map that we have done. It's not totally updated, because we have 2 or 3 more networks right now. It's not that the networks appear, it's that we discover the networks, because the information is not centralized, and we are trying to systematize since 2012 in a project that is called Jesuit.Network, that I invite you to check. We are trying to identify all the networks of the Society of Jesus, or linked to the mission of the Society of Jesus. And we have identified right now about 83 of those networks. Some of them belong to the Society of Jesus, some of them are just linked to the mission of the Society of Jesus. So networking is happening, especially in the last, I will say, 14 years, we have seen incredible movement. Our strengths are in the classic homologous network in our region, like universities in the United States, or social centers in Latin America, or parishes in Europe. So we are good at that, homologous institutions in regions. We are not as good when we are crossing the sectors. But We have also 4 in the apostolic sectors, networks in the universities, social sector, secondary and primary education, and faith. And then we have also by geographic in the different regions. You know all this. This is just but we are some new networks that are not as classic and not as sectorial and not as geographic, and we are trying to learn how to move with them. These are the most interesting because they are totally new. Let me just stop and say, very important, we are not looking for efficiency here. We are building networks for the good of the mission. We are not technical people trying to increase efficiency in the apostolic body. What is driving us is answering in a better way to the mission we have been given. Okay, so, and not all the networks give the same value to the mission. That's why we need to emphasize those that actually help us better. So you will have the slides, so you have all the information, but I think there is no one way of doing networks. There is not one size that fits all. So there are many. It depends of if we want to collaborate, to create a project together, if we want to just centralize services, to gain economy of scale. There are many ways of doing networks. But what I want to be clear of the tweet that I would love to bring to you today, to your heart, or to tattoo us, is collaboration is actually expanding the possibilities of our mission. This is why it's so important. I'm convinced, and I have seen this in the last few years, that there are spaces of mission that we haven't discovered yet. So we are still understanding the potentiality of the mission of the society, and somehow is hidden many times behind collaboration opportunities. So who was going to say that higher education with refugee population was going to be one of our apostolic fields? And this is a mix of an apostolate of higher ed in distance learning education and the apostolate of the refugees in GRS, and we have Peter Valais here, that create this idea of the Jesuit worldwide learning, that is suddenly when you mix both apostolates without creating a lot of institutional weight, you open a new space for the mission that were not before. This is incredible, and this is not a question of technology. We have this temptation of thinking that this is just for geeks of technology. I'm one of them, it's true, but this is not a question of technology. It's more a question of creativity and ability to lead the change that we need to implement in our apostolic body. And that's why I challenge a lot many times to our teams, because I say is our creativity and the ability to lead is actually the frontier that is the difficulty to open up the mission is on us, and is that we don't have creativity enough and we don't know how to lead the changes. Okay, so in the last 14 years, only in the last 14 years, we have been witnessing this huge dynamic, especially around the different sectors from Rome, from the secretariats. They have been focused all the time in collaboration. So the first one was the social apostolate in 2008. So 2008, we gathered in Madrid, in El Escorial, in a workshop of global advocacy, trying to understand what were the topics where we can do advocacy together at the global level in order to have a higher impact. And we came up with these 4 topics, thinking that if we join our efforts in those 4 topics, we can actually have a better impact in advocacy, very, very specific, in advocacy. So out of it, a project called Jesuit was created, defending the right to education at the global level. Another project that was Jesuit, that probably you have known about it, that is somehow the hub of reflection of ecology and spirituality in the Jesuit world. Thanks to this, we are represented as a group on the big UN meetings, etc., because we have a global network on ecology. Another one that came up was this idea of justice in mining, trying to bring the reflection of how the multinational enterprises that do extractive industries can have a huge role on some of the hardest conflicts, arms, especially in Africa and Latin America. There are many background logics that are somehow European or North American enterprises, extractive enterprises. So, and together we can somehow bring this knowledge into practice. All these networks have a strategy in the background. Remember yesterday in one of the panels we were recommended we need to be intentionally strategic and tactically, so it's not easy to bring a global network into place. So there are, we don't have time, but there are strategies in the background working quite well in order to have an impact on the different networks at the global level. Some of them are working fine, others are working less fine, but we are learning, you know. In 2014, for example, we have already a global meeting of networks of the social apostolate in Loyola. We have also the meeting of the 50th anniversary of the social apostolate. For example, during the COVID time, this is very interesting, thanks to the work of the network, during the COVID time, we joined Jesuit.Network with the social apostolate in Rome, and we created a dashboard of how the different projects, educational and social projects worldwide, were answering the crisis of COVID. In a moment where we didn't have any information, you had no one to call. We came up with an interesting dashboard that for almost a year and a half was the base to find information of where were the more needed for funding, for example, or for institutional extent, where were the institutions at risk of disappear during COVID, and they were being asked in an automatic system once per month to update the information. So this is something that came up out of the strength of the previous networking efforts. You know this because it's your secretariat. Already yesterday, Father Christie was explaining how all the meetings, at least since Mexico, 2010, are focused explicitly in networking among higher ed. Actually, I say that the documents from Mexico, I call them the Bible of networking from Adolfo Nicolás. If you go to those documents, you see all these insights are already written in an incredible vision already there. Shaping the future was very visionary, the whole concept. So I don't want to go into detail because you know quite well this apostolic sector, but you have different attempts of having platforms, and these are like a path that came up into the Jesuit Worldwide Learning. I see Peter Valais smiling because it's part of the history, and we were somehow engaged in some of these projects. There was also a Jesuit Digital Network attempt of a platform for educators at the higher ed level. The Ignited initiative from the business schools that actually came from, I think the current IAJU backbone of technology is coming up from Ignited ideas, you know, and as you know, in 2019, finally the International Association came up as something real. But there were a lot of collaboration before we finally came up with this idea of we need an international association of Jesuit universities. And also there is a whole strategy in the background of IAJU, and you have the people that are driving that strategy is here. So it's quite intentional the way it's being driven, the communication, the different meetings, the content of the meetings, because I think you are actually in a very good path. My point is that you are probably the sector with more resources, with more Jesuits, with more capacities, so probably you are like the engine of collaboration for the future of the apostolic works. And in the last assembly at Boston, your apostolic sector presented already a network of reconciliation that is being created as we speak. This is new from this summer, from early August. They are also doing a kind of a dashboard of peace and reconciliation projects around the world. If we go to secondary ed, you know already the different meetings they have had globally. I love this example because they were the first ones in 2012 to say we are a global community of schools. And in just a few years, they have created an incredible sense of community just through a very smart conceptualization and strategy, to the extent that now they are able of creating a set of action points that all the schools in the world are trying to answer, and also few challenges from the Father General that are exposed to all the schools. You can imagine what does, this is not just a document, they are actually having a whole process where you have 13 action points that all the schools in the world are trying to go through. This is a work of 10 years of networking at the global level. And they have created this concept of Red Global Jesuita de Colegios that also involve Fe y Alegría and GRS. So this is not just the classic schools, but also the ones at the frontiers. This is very powerful. Just listen, because this is just was created last year, and this is being somehow, you can see some of the processes that are becoming a huge potential. This is one of them. Actually, Father Mesa, the Secretary of Secondary Education, in Barcelona this July, it was already talking about the Jesuit World School, a project that is trying to approach the idea of secondary education at the global level. This is happening thanks to all the previous, so 10 years of global networking allows the possibility to think such a big way. That is not just a word, there is a whole process behind trying to focus to answer this idea of, can we bring the Ratio Studiorum into a Jesuit global school? And also, collaboration is a secretary that doesn't exist anymore. It was closed like 5 years ago, but when it was open, we were working under the umbrella of that secretariat in order to bring all these reflections about networking in 2012 in Boston and in 2018 in Georgetown. So those meetings created two of the documents that are the basic ideas about network at the global level in the Society of Jesus. I encourage you, because out of those meetings came up this project of Jesuit.Network, where you can find a systematization of all the networks linked to the Society of Jesus, all the different meetings that are happening, and all the different stories about collaboration that are going on around the world. This is a cross-sectorial project that is bringing somehow the information around collaboration internationally that is going on in the world. I recommend you to check on it and subscribe to the newsletter, because it's actually something unique, because we are extracting and writing about international networks of the society in a monthly basis. So at the end, networking is a concept that we are trying to shape. It's not just a technique, it's more an idea of we can raise the agency of our apostolic work. I'm not sure if I'm being clear enough, but so networks are not operational structure for us, are opportunities to create, to channel a new culture of collaboration that allow new apostolic response. This is for me the essential idea that I want to transmit. So we are not just creating efficiency. We don't seek to improve the use of resources, but to find ways to respond in a collaborative way to new areas of mission. So the question is, what is that we only can do if we work together? And this is the basic question for networking, and I think is the one you are trying to answer in. What is, beyond a mutual benefit, what is that we only can do when we do it together? So we have learned many lessons in these 14 years of global networking. Arturo, I think, is being quite visionary when he's challenging everybody. I'm not asking if the structures are working well. I'm asking if they are the best ones for the mission we are being entrusted with. And this changed the whole way of thinking. So it's not, are you working in an efficient way? No, the point is, do you have the structure that allow us to bring our mission into play? And this is huge. I think this is another of these tweet concepts. We are wiring the apostolic body as we speak. So the collaboration initiatives we are creating, the links that we are creating between institutions, are those who will shape the way we will develop the mission in the future. So that's why it's so important, this kind of meetings, because out of your interactions and vision and ideas, we are opening up or not possibilities into the future. Nobody knew about Jesuit Worldwide Learning before. It was created little by little through a lot of people thinking ideas, bringing them into practice, pilot project, the ideas with GRS was very engaged at the beginning. Then you have, the US universities with a lot of resources and knowledge, and little by little, things are coming into place. So the future of our apostolic map depends on how we combine our current structure. We are not going to create more institutions. We are tired. We have huge apostolic body, very heavy. We don't think we are in a position of creating a lot of heavy endeavors, but we are combining them in a new way that is opening up new spaces. The second lesson is that it's true that we have a hierarchy in our structure of the society, but there is a whole hierarchy behind. So the way we are creating connections is actually creating a different way of understanding the apostolic body, where institutions are connected among themselves, trying to answer the mission in different ways. I'm trying to talk with Rome many times explaining this, and it's not easy to understand, because I say, even if you think you are leading, I mean, the institutions are already creating connection, making decisions on the future funding opportunities with the European Union, and they are discerning what to answer, and they are years ahead of the governance of the society. That's why I say, and we know with whom we should talk if you want to make things happen, and it's not on the top usually. Is that guy in that institution? Is Borja here? Suddenly you know how to play, and some of us are learning how to play on the hierarchy, and that's why we move so quick around the Jesuit world. And it's not always through Rome. It's actually a different way of understanding. This is a good lesson. That's why we are incorporating this also in our way of leading. The Society of Jesus in the last congregation was also worried about this and say, please, let's do a reflection of at what level of governance the Jesuits should exercise the responsibility on the network, because we don't know exactly what is going on, but it's not easy to lead. So what we are trying is coming up with this idea that when we talk about coordinating the mission, it implies coordinating the institution, but also to animate the networks. We are little by little understanding. And especially the secretaries, when they call the delegates to Rome to coordinate the mission, they also call the leaders of the networks. This is totally new, because we are creating a level of hierarchy that is little by little acknowledged by the hierarchy, because without it, we lack all this essence of the mission. Third lesson learned, in the networks, when we say these three networks, collaboration and discernment, is actually what is happening. The networks allow us to collaborate, are the baseline to collaborate. So to be a collaborative body allow us to do discernment in a corporate way. So it's all intertwined. Networking is actually the baseline to allow us to be a body that listen, learn, adapt, and respond to the calls of the Spirit. That's why it's so high, the concept. So networking is the first step into become a body, apostolic body that discerns. This is very powerful. That's why some of us are so enthusiastic about networking, because it's actually a condition of possibility for collaboration. And to be a collaborative body is a condition of possibility for corporate discernment. Today, to discern and decide, we need to have ears and understand and learn through experience from all the corners of our apostolic body. You cannot make the decision from the center. So this is why it's so important. The fourth lesson is that the UAPs are a huge opportunity for networking. You know what it means? We have a huge network of institutions, but now all of us are thinking on 4, let's call it axis of mission, where we are trying to align. So it's so easy that any of us that want to collaborate internationally, we have 4 concepts where you know that if you get close to one of them, you will find people to collaborate with. And this is very important, because only on this way we can do collaboration on that scale. Another lesson is that not all the topics call to collaborate in the same way. In 2017, we did a survey with more than 3,000 answers around the world. We're trying to ask, what are the topics that will be interesting for you to collaborate around the Jesuit institutions? And just look at this. The most important ones are peace and reconciliation, education, human rights, migrant and refugees. So in the educational and the social arena are like the most appealing areas for us to collaborate. This is interesting, and also you can see this from the other side. All the different sectors are having work groups, international work groups, right? So there is starting to emerge a coincidence between the sectors of some topics that you can see are focus of international work of all the sectors independently, but suddenly we have global citizenship, ecology, and forced migration, where you can actually find international work groups on the topic in all the secretaries that are working at the global level. This is interesting, and it's coming up bottom up. It's not, no one say, I mean, the UAPs help, but this is already, so there is a call also to intertwine your international works, you know, through this coincidence at the global level. 7, and Father Christie yesterday was referring to technology. My point is not a question of technology networking, but it needs platforms. It needs platforms. So each of the sectors have platforms in order to create the collaboration. So we always need to have a global platform, otherwise it's not possible to sustain the collaboration. Another lesson, the 8th, is that we are mainly an educational network. This is why I'm telling you that you are the future of collaboration, because for example, the primary link with the Jesuit mission, for all the people that answered that survey that I was talking about, 45% was through schools and universities. So there is nothing, we are an educational network, and our interface with the world is actually through schools or universities. So this says a lot about what is our strength for networking, you know. Another learned lesson is that we are actually learning to discover the potential. The best practice we have on this is the secondary education apostolate. In the last 10 years, from 2012 to 2022, so they have already met, they started having a colloquium in 2012, just to know each other, then have a seminary on topics of common interest, and then they have a congress to create an action plan together. And they call this discovering the potential of the network. And now they are starting to do a similar cycle of a colloquium that was last year digitally, because it was not possible to do it presential due to the COVID thing. And they are going to have a seminar in Yogyakarta next year. And they will do another congress probably another 4 years later. So there is a cycle here of discovering and activating the network that is actually working quite fine. And I encourage you to think strategically about networking, and the best practice we have is actually a secondary level. And the last lesson learned is that we have an apostolic body that is actually a matrix. So we have regions, we have sectors, and we have networks. And when you want to activate, imagine during the COVID, we create this, first time we did this, the Pentecost Vigil, remember? I'm not sure if you were part of it, but so to activate something like that at the global level, you need to work with the conference. So they permeate on but you need to work with the sectorial, with the sectors, with the secretaries, but also you need to work with the networks. And when you work with the 3 axes, then is when the magic happens, because we put into dancing to all our apostolic body. So I'm gonna end here. Just two recommendations for IAJU here. The first one is about, I know it's a change of level, but I think the biggest challenge is identity. It's not technological and it's not strategical. It's identity. And my whole point, and I think Christy yesterday was very emphasizing this also, is like how to move, you know, from an attachment to my own institution towards this sense of belonging to a universal apostolic body. And this is not easy, because we say we have the same mission, but at the end I'm fighting for my own institution. No, my P&L is in my institution, my salary is in my institution. So it's not easy to jump to this idea that I belong to a global community with a global or universal mission. And I think the only way to do this is through spiritual exercises, the experience of being called, my own vocation that was talking about that Borja before. This idea, for example, of experiencing volunteer at the borders, at the frontier, so you can have a sense of, oh my God, so as a body we are answering to some of these biggest challenges, so I have to put my person and my institution at the service of the common mission. I always challenge the alumni and the students with these 3 questions that are actually the basics for networking, that are appealing to your identity. So the question is, do I feel part of something bigger than myself? Because this is key. This is key. Did my Jesuit education bring me into this idea that I'm actually part of something bigger? So my life is not the last scale of my thinking, of my dreaming, of my future. Second question is about, do I experience the desire to live this vocation to transformation? This is also so important. And finally, the other question is, do I understand that my vital horizon, there is much that I can only achieve if I do it with others? This idea that even my own vocation, my own mission, only can be achieved if I work with others. So this is the first challenge for you. This is about identity. So sometimes we don't understand that to increase, for example, collaboration, we need to strengthen the sense of vocation and universal belonging to our people. And the second challenge, and this is huge, is how to activate the network. This is something I say to all the networks. In your case, you are quite activated already. Actually, your group is an example of it, and the different breakout sessions you are going to have are examples of how this is already being implemented. But I think it's a huge challenge because you have a strategy that is based on regional associations. Also, it's important to understand, how the secondary education example, I think we need to move beyond the potential into practice. You have very good examples, and I think also that a good discernment process on a platform that will allow you to do it will be a very interesting way of bringing the minds and hearts together into this idea. So the identity and network activation for me are the 2 main basic concepts to move forward. And I want to finish with this quote from Fratelli Tutti that I think is a very encouraging concept towards collaboration and networking. These are basic ideas to help to interact with all of you. Thank you very much.